Welcome to the season premiere of the After Dark. I'm Sean Santa. Things are about to happen, everybody. We have Rob Dowson directly from the world of the Kentucky 79-61. We have the coaches, the Miller brothers, Sean Miller, Archie Miller, with us. We're taking your questions, your comments, your thoughts, everything. College basketball is back. What an opening night it was, and we'll start with this. I'll start with you, Archie. Duke, what did they show you in this season opener 8-point win over the Wildcats?
Well, I think just in watching the game tonight, they got elite talent, with PAOLO and TREVOR KEELS additions. Those two guys are, all conference caliber players, maybe the two best players on the floor, not only for Duke, but in the game. And that's a big difference in those guys a year ago.
The length of Duke, wow. On a night where Duke only hits one three-pointer, and on a night where at times the star power was on the bench, PAOLO BANCHERO dealing with cramps in this game in the second half. And, wow, TREVOR KEELS, the revelation of the evening. Sean, your takeaways on how Duke was able to get this done?
Well, I think anytime that you can be on the stage that they were on this evening and you go 1 for 13 from the three-point line and have the feeling that you're going to win the game almost the entirety. I give Kentucky a lot of credit. They fought hard, and the three-point line, Kentucky shooting it well, Duke going 1 for 13 kind of kept them in it. But, the telling stat, and I think especially early in the year, when you can have a free throw differential of 23 free throw attempts to 7, Duke 23, Kentucky 7, that was the difference in tonight's game. And I think a lot of it was reflective of the difference almost in depth and talent. I thought Duke was the more talented team here tonight.
Let's go to the Garden. I'll tell you what, it's never been better. You guys have both heard this when you're walking off the Garden floor. New York State of Mind, Billy Joel, Frank Sinatra with New York. Like, it has never been better to hear those sounds coming from the world's most famous arena where a capacity crowd lit the place up tonight. Rob Dowson, you are inside the building. Your biggest takeaway of Duke, Kentucky is?
PAOLO BANCHERO is a monster. I was so impressed with what he did tonight. It wasn't just the stuff offensively. I mean, you're going to see the numbers. What did he end up with, like 23? 8, something like that, but it was the stuff he was able to do defensively. He was switching, he was able to move his feet on the perimeter. There were a couple possessions where he was sliding and keeping perimeter players in front. And to me, that's kind of what the difference maker is going to end up being for Duke, right? If they're going to play big, there's going to be situations where you got to have PAOLO BANCHERO guarding fours, guarding wings, and if he can create those mismatches offensively while also taking them away on the defensive end of the floor, that's a difference maker. And look, we mentioned this off air. What really stood out to me was when Duke was able to make their run, when they had Mark Williams on the bench, when they had Wendell Moore on the bench, and when they had PAOLO on the bench with the cramps. If they're pulling away when their three best players aren't on the floor, and maybe that's not their three best players. TREVOR was awesome tonight, but that was my biggest takeaway. Duke looked really, really good.
Yeah, I see you nodding, Sean. The length of Duke, and to see BANCHERO and KEELS do that, speak to when you're making that debut and being a coach on the sideline, what's the balance of, hey, you know what you recruited versus it's the very first game and there's a new speed level on a night where these freshmen, they handled it with ease.
They really did. Most nights that Duke plays, they'll not only have the best player on the court in BANCHERO, but KEELS is really impressive. I mean, it was almost like a 1-2 punch. Those two guys, in my mind, were the two best players on the court. And to your point, very few college teams have one guy at the 5 as long and as talented as Williams is, right, on Duke's side. But the combination of John and Williams for 40 minutes, protecting the basket, having that ferocious size, what it's going to do for Duke is they're just going to be very difficult to score. They're going to be able to pressure. They're going to be able to make up for players getting beat off the dribble because they have not only one rim protector, but they have a couple. And again, they're going to have maybe almost every game the two best players on the court on their team.
Can I ask you guys something, Sean and Arch? Did you see this coming from Trevor Keels? I mean, you guys were out on the recruiting trail when he was coming up. Did you expect this out of him? Because I did not.
From my perspective, he's been doing that since he's been in 10th grade. His size and his body has always allowed him to play that physical offensive scoring style. Even when he was younger, he's more streamlined now a little bit, probably strength and conditioning program a little bit, but he's always been a bona fide scorer. He comes out of great high school program, great AAU program. He's battle tested, and you could tell that the stage wasn't too bright for him tonight. He was ready to go.
They got him on the Jeff Goodman keto diet. Is that what it was?
I think so. I think so. They may need to get a few more water bottles before the game. Those cramps were kicking in pretty good on them their second half.
Yeah, and don't be generous. Goodman ate a slice of bread at a New York Italian restaurant last night.
He broke down. Way to get him, John. He broke down.
He broke down. You know, speaking of which, I have to ask this question because, Sean, your brother said this earlier in public. He talked about, I think you got him a number of times in the backyard growing up, and I'm sure you've gotten him over the years. But now you got a little bit of age, and we understand you're having some back issues.
Yeah, no. When you're fat and crazy, it's not good for your back. And guess what? It took to year 53 to get me. But yeah, no, I officially now have a bad back. I wouldn't mess with Arch's like 6% body fat. You know, when you don't have a job, you can go one of two ways, right? You could be the guy who works out 3 times a day and only eats, nuts and vegetables. That's Arch. Or you can kind of be me that experiments with a little bit of everything,
That's right here. Let's make up the left side of an offensive line.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hopefully I can move more towards a tight end here. I'm working on it. Arch has been a good influence.
Line is not good. Line is not good.
But you were talking about Banchero, and I had a chance to watch him play quite a bit, being that he's from Seattle. And he shows up physically as an amazing athlete, basketball player, but he has a maturity about him that the great ones do. He's a champion. It just seems like the teams that he plays on, they win. And tonight, even though that's game 1, hard to believe of his college career, he showed up in Madison Square Garden as the best player in the game, him and Keels, but it's almost like they expected to win. And you could see that confidence and maturity that you don't oftentimes see in an 18, 19-year-old freshman. Regardless of how talented he is, he has that added dimension that I think will serve Duke really well here in Coach K's last year.
Yeah, and in Coach K's last year, that dynamic, it's only human nature, guys. Coach K goes out to center court at halftime of the first game between Michigan State and Kansas. There's a big ceremony. They've got the plaque. He's getting mobbed. The capacity of these freshmen to be able to step up on this stage, it felt like that type of a win for their coach to start off his final ride in fashion. And I think on the other side here, and Archie, I want to bring you in here on this point, like the first night of the season. Well, is this a coach's biggest, like what are you having trouble sleeping the night before that first game just because everybody's like waiting for that 40 minutes to make all their thoughts, all their judgments on your team?
Well, I think, the opening of the season, there's a lot of anticipation, surrounding, everybody on your team, your incoming recruits. Your own team hasn't really experienced only 5 guys playing for real. You've either been in an exhibition game or scrimmage setting. A lot of guys have gotten minutes. In a game like that in Madison Square Garden tonight, and you're playing for all the marbles, there's some nerves, there's some anxiety, but not just for the coaches, the players. So it's a tough game. Your opener's always a little bit tricky.